In the 1890s, presumably in August, Edward Curtis of Machias, Maine, took a trip that he described in this way. That was an adventure to be looked forward to, and afterwards remembered as a journey into a distant country where there were strange things to see and new things to do. But what exotic place was he talking about? Let's hear the whole quote. Not far from Columbia Falls lies a strange and denuded highland area known as the Barrens. It is there that blueberries grow, that great crop for which Maine has become so well known. In the picking season, many of the families of Columbia Falls migrated to the Barrens to pick berries. Up there they lived in tents and cooked in the open and picked berries all the day long. Sometimes Aunt Chris took us to the Barrens, and that was an adventure to be looked forward to, and afterwards remembered as a journey into a distant country where there were strange things to see and new things to do. Up there, one could quickly fill his tin cup with wild strawberries, and as to blueberries, they were countless and everywhere. Columbia and Columbia Falls, Maine, are two towns well known for their blueberry barrens. Today, of course, the Maine wild lowbush blueberry is a commercial industry. But for this video, we're going to take a more historic look at this famous berry. The cultivation of blueberries in Maine goes back before European settlement. The native tribes of Maine cleared large areas of woods by burning, creating expansive open fields where blueberries could thrive. This practice is what established our blueberry barrens today. Burning still continues as a way to clear the fields of weeds, although mowing is more common. These early blueberry barrens, before they became a large industry, were thought of as public property. Welton Munson, who wrote the first study of blueberries in Maine, tells us this in 1901. Before canning the fruit was deemed practicable, the plains were considered common property, and people came for 50 and even 100 miles for a week's outing and to gather blueberries for their own use and to sell to the merchants of neighboring cities and villages. The timber on the plains was fast being destroyed by fires, which were set by the blueberry pickers. If you know where to look, there are patches of blueberries that are still considered common property. Some people have their own special patch they return to year after year for an afternoon outing of berry picking. This poem by Robert Frost shows us a humorous competition between neighbors over a patch of berries. You ought to have seen what I saw on my way to the village through Mortenson's pasture today. Blueberries as big as the end of your thumb, real sky blue and heavy and ready to drum in the cavernous pail of the first one to come, and all ripe together, not some of them green, and some of them ripe you ought to have seen.
I don't know what part of the pasture you mean.
You know where they cut off the woods. Let me see. It was 2 years ago, or no, can it be? No longer than that? And the following fall, the fire ran and burned it all up but the wall.
Why, there hasn't been time for the bushes to grow. That's always the way with the blueberries, though. There may not have been the ghost of a sign of them anywhere under the shade of the pine, but get the pine out of the way, you may burn the pasture all over until not a fern or grass blade is left, not to mention a stick, and presto, they're up all around you, as thick and hard to explain as a conjurer's trick.
It must be on charcoal they fatten their fruit. I tasted them sometimes the flavor of soot. And after all, really, they're ebony-skinned. The blue's but a mist from the breath of the wind, a tarnish that goes at a touch of the hand, and less than the tan with which pickers are tanned.
Does Mortenson know what he has, do you think?
He may, and not care, and so leave the chewink to gather them for him. You know what he is. He won't make the fact that they're rightfully his an excuse for keeping us other folk out.
I wonder you didn't see Lauren about.
The best of it was that I did. Do you know, I was just getting through what the field had to show, and over the wall and into the road, when who should come by with a Democrat load of all the young chattering Laurens alive, but Lauren, the fatherly, out for a drive.
He saw you then. What did he do? Did he frown?
He just kept nodding his head up and down. You know how politely he always goes by. He thought a big thought, I could tell by his eye, which being expressed might be this in effect: I have left those there berries, I shrewdly suspect, to ripen too long. I am greatly to blame.
He's a thriftier person than some I could name.
He seems to be thrifty, and hasn't he need, with the mouths of all those young Laurens to feed? He has brought them all up on wild berries, they say. Like birds, they store a great many away. They eat them year-round, and those they don't eat, they sell in the store and buy shoes for their feet.
Who cares what they say? It's a nice way to live, just taking what nature is willing to give, not forcing her hand with harrow and plow.
I wish you had seen his perpetual bow, and the air of the youngsters. Not one of them turned, and they looked so solemn, absurdly concerned.
I wish I knew half what the flock of them know, of where all the berries and other things grow. Cranberries in bogs, and raspberries on top of the boulder-strewn mountain, and when they will crop. I met them one day, and each had a flower, stuck into his berries as fresh as a shower. Some strange kind. They told me it hadn't a name.
I've told you how once, not long after we came, I almost provoked poor Lauren to mirth, by going to him of all people on earth, to ask if he knew any fruit to be had for the picking. The rascal, he said he'd be glad to tell if he knew, but the year had been bad. There had been some berries, but those were all gone. He didn't say where they had been, but went on, I'm sure, as polite as could be. He spoke to his wife in the door, let me see, Maine, we don't know any good berrying place. It was all he could do to keep a straight face.
If he thinks all the fruit that grows wild is for him, he'll find he's mistaken. See here, for a whim, we'll pick in the Mortensons' pasture this year. We'll go in the morning, that is, if it's clear, and the sun shines out warm, the vines must be wet. It's so long since I picked, I almost forget how we used to pick berries. We took one look around, then sank out of sight like trolls underground, and saw nothing more of each other, or heard, unless you said I was keeping a bird away from its nest, and I said it was you. Well, one of us is, for complaining it flew around and around us. And then for a while we picked, till I feared you had wandered a mile, and I thought I had lost you. I lifted a shout too loud for the distance you were, it turned out, for when you made answer your voice was as low as talking. You stood up beside me, you know.
We shan't have the place to ourselves to enjoy. Not likely when all the young Laurens deploy. They'll be there tomorrow, or even tonight. They won't be too friendly, they may be polite, to people they look on as having no right to pick where they're picking, but we won't complain. You ought to have seen how it looked in the rain, the fruit mixed with the water in layers of leaves, like two kinds of jewels, a vision for thieves. One detail you probably noticed already is that for some, blueberry picking meant there would also be a camping trip. Here we have record of another August camping trip, forever preserved in a song. Lake Chimo. Chimo Pond, located in Clifton, Eddington, and Bradley, was a popular camping and picnic spot for the people of neighboring towns. Fanny Hardy Exstorm, in her pioneering study of Maine folk songs titled Minstrelsy of Maine, tells us that the name is a corruption of a Native American word, which means large bog. There is a large bog on the northeast side of the lake. A resident of Clifton told Extorm, "The blueberry bog there was always known as Chimo, if I remember correctly, and later the lake took the name." I left old Lake Chimo a long way behind me, with many a tear back to Old Town I came. And if I but live till 1 year from this August, I'll pack up my traps for Old Chimo again. There pickerel are plenty and perch in abundance, the whiskey and new milk they both flow like rain. And if I but live till 1 year from this August, I'll pack up my traps for Old Chimo again. "'Tis pleasant to think of the shed tent we slept in. The walls were thin cloth and the roof was of pole. How familiar the chirp of the birds in the morning, and the doctor a-digging the beans from the hole. There pickerel are plenty and perch in abundance, the whiskey and new milk they both flow like rain. And if I but live till 1 year from this August, I'll pack up my traps for Old Chimo again." I think of fish chowder red hot from the kettle, and the pork that we frizzled so nice on the fire, with big roaring Crawford a-raising the devil till 3 in the morning before he'd retire. There pickerel are plenty and perch in abundance, the whiskey and new milk they both flow like rain. And if I but live till 1 year from this August, I'll pack up my traps for Old Chimo again. As the sun was a-setting in most royal splendor, and the birds were a-singing their songs in the trees, then one of our number was seen without clothing, promenading the shores and enjoying the breeze. The name of this poor and unfortunate fellow is kept from the public just merely to show the respect that we have for each one of our number. The names of the rest are here given below. There was Roe, Cushman, Baker, and Douglas, and Skinner, with their wives and sweethearts, and others a score. And last but not least came Miss Scott and Miss Nichols, two gushing young damsels from over the shore. There pickerel are plenty and perch in abundance, the whiskey and new milk they both flow like rain. And if I but live till 1 year from this August, I'll pack up my traps for Old Chimo again. Now all you old fogies who want recreation, just come out to Chimo if you want some fun. And there you will find all our names August I'll pack up my trap for old Chimo again. I'll pack up my trap for old Chimo again. Most of the time, we define our seasons by what nature manifests, what flowers are in bloom, what fruit is ripe, which birds are singing. But what is absent from the landscape is also another marker of the changing seasons. For a moment, think back to Edward Curtis and how he described the Barrens as a place where there were many strange things to see. One strange thing to see on the Barrens, but fast disappearing in August, is the upland sandpiper. The upland sandpiper is a migratory shorebird, wintering in South America and breeding across northern North America. This strange sandpiper doesn't live near the water like most shorebirds. Instead, it prefers very large open spaces and grasslands where it hunts for insects. In fact, it is more common on the Great Plains. But the blueberry barrens make a good home for this uncommon and strange bird. Columbia and Jonesboro are among the best places to see this bird in New England. When on the Barrens, look for a large sandpiper with a long skinny neck, large head, and large eyes. The best time of year to see the upland sandpiper is May through July. The reason being, July through November, shorebirds, sandpipers, plovers, and others are migrating from their breeding grounds in northern North America to their wintering grounds in South America. And so is the upland sandpiper. Many of them depart in late July and early August, although a few may stay into September. If you'd like to hear the upland sandpiper's mating call, you'll have to wait for spring. The sound is best described by Edward Howard Forbush. Except the wail of the wind, there is nothing else like it in nature. It is an ethereal sound which might well pass for the utterance of the fabled wind spirit. The absence of this bird on the Barrens in the beginning of the great shorebird migration reminds us that summer is quickly going by, just as a passing breeze or a flock of migrating birds. The wildness and strangeness of the upland sandpiper reminds us of the blueberry's wild past and present. This August, when you are driving through the Barrens, buying fresh blueberries in quart boxes from a farm stand, or picking them yourself, take a moment to realize that was an adventure, a journey into a distant country where there were strange things to see and new things to do.